friends. Welcome to Foggy Oak Fairy Tales, a stories podcast for all ages, where we tell farm stories from real life happenings on Foggy Oak Farm, as well as fantasy tales to spark both learning and imagination. I'm so glad you're here. This week's story is an adaptation of an Aesop's fable called The North Wind and the Sun. If you aren't already familiar with Aesop's fables, I'll give you a little background. A fable is a type of short story that illustrates a moral lesson. If you listened to the last episode on King Midas and the Golden Touch, you might recall one of the lessons from that story was be careful what you wish for. And I could also argue, be happy with what you have. Aesop's fables are a collection of these short tales, often featuring animals and forces of nature, that are believed to have been written thousands of years ago by a storyteller named Aesop. Aesop, if he existed, is thought to have lived between 620 and 564 BCE, which is over 2,500 years ago. And he is commonly accepted as the author of the over 650 fables that collectively are known as Aesop's Fables. I'm sure we'll be spending time with many of these stories over the course of this podcast. In fact, we've already covered at least one in the episode Bear the Bully and the Bundle of Sticks. Some of the lessons in these stories haven't aged well, but a lot of them are just as relevant and useful today as they were back in Aesop's time. Let's see if you agree with me that the lesson from this story is a useful one. Once upon a time, and long ago, the North Wind and the Sun were having an argument. The fierce, proud, and frigid North Wind, bringer of storms and winter, was entirely convinced that she was the stronger of the two. The Sun was equally convinced of her own superior strength.
"There is nothing you could say that will convince me, Sun," the North Wind boomed. "You might as well accept that I am far, far stronger than you and leave be."
"If you are so strong," the Sun said with a sly smile, "then surely you won't mind proving it."
"Of course I can prove it," the North Wind replied with disdain. "It is evident to anyone at all that I am the superior force. There is no trial you can set me that I will not best."
"Oh, I don't have anything so grand in mind," the Sun replied warmly. "Something simple will do. See that traveler just over there?" she asked, gesturing to a man passing along the road below. "Let us agree that whoever can strip that traveler of his cloak is the stronger force."
"That is no contest at all," the North Wind laughed. "Very well,"
and proceeded at once to blast the poor unwitting traveler with a howling gust of freezing wind. In the first onslaught of that frigid wind, the ends of the traveler's cloak did blow and whip all about him, but the cloak did not come off. The traveler, initially caught by surprise, quickly wrapped his cloak close and tight around him to try and shut out the icy gusts of wind. And so it went. The North Wind blew harder. The traveler wrapped his cloak tighter. The harder the wind blew, the tighter he held his cloak. No matter how hard the North Wind clawed and tore at it, she could not blow the cloak away. Exhausted, the North Wind turned to the Sun.
"Well, let's see what you make of it then, Sun, for I doubt you'll manage any better than I."
To the North Wind's surprise, the Sun simply began to shine. The gentle warmth was a welcome change to the traveler, who had been quite frozen through in the bitter cold from the North Wind. He gratefully unfastened the clasp around his cloak and allowed it to hang loosely from his shoulders, the better to let in the warmth of the sun's gentle rays. Now, the sun allowed her rays to grow warmer and warmer. The man suddenly found himself drenched in sweat instead of shivering in cold. He paused to mop his brow with the edge of his cloak. He attempted to travel onward, but it soon became clear that there was nothing for it. He was overheated. The traveler threw off his cloak and shuffled into the shade of a tree by the roadside, where he promptly lay down and fell asleep, head pillowed on the contested cloak. The north wind gave the sun one fulminating look and, without a word, let out a great whoosh of air as she blew herself far away to sulk away her loss. The sun dialed back her rays and allowed the traveler a comfortable nap in the shade as a reward for proving her theory. Gentle persuasion may accomplish what force and bluster cannot. The end. Okay, friends, what do you think? Do you agree with the moral of this story? Is there something else you would have tried to win the bet? Let me know if you have thoughts or talk about it with your parents. I think it's interesting to consider the different strategies that the north wind and the sun tried and determine what I think I would have done. Ultimately, I think the sun had the right approach. See you next time. Remember, you're part of the story too. What did you think of this story? What did you imagine when you were listening? We'd love to hear your part of the story. If you and your grown-up want, you can share your thoughts or a picture you drew with our Foggy Oak podcast family. You might find it easiest to share with us on Facebook at Foggy Oak Farm, but we have lots of options on our website, foggyoakfairytales.com. You can also check out pictures from the farm and learn more about us. Thanks for being part of the story, and I hope you'll join us next week.